Good morning, everybody. And first off, as Ronnie said, thank you so much for attending today. We know it's a big commitment in your time, and we really appreciate that as well. We also want to thank you for being customers of EMC, because without you being customers, we couldn't hold an event like this. And so we appreciate your business with us. Today, I'm going to present, and guess what? This is going to be the only presentation you probably see today that does not have any product slides in it. So it's a good thing. Oh, thank you for turning the lights down. Everything's a blur out there. I want to talk to you today about how we see the industry shifting to put in context where EMC's approach is to the marketplace today. Most people think of EMC, obviously, as being a hardware company, and I always laugh at the EMC forum in India. We were doing a product roadmap with a customer, and when we got done with it, their comment at the end was, "We love you as a hardware company. Everything you're going to go do is a software company." So if you think of the video at the very beginning, we're one of the top 10 largest software companies in the world because we see a dramatic shift going on in the marketplace that changes the way we believe IT is adapting and moving in the industry today. With research with IDC, we see 4 big shifts going on in the marketplace. 1 is around mobile, 2 is cloud, 3 is big data, and 4 is social. And it's driving very different behavior patterns today. So if you think of the mobile space today, each of you probably has a mobile device. I can see a tablet on the first table down there. But this shift is really going on in the enterprise space today. You've adopted that more than likely in your personal lives, and you're struggling with it from an enterprise business perspective, how to move forward in that. In the cloud space, we're all used to using Google. We hear a lot about Amazon. And there are aspects of our lives and many things we do, Facebook, et cetera, that are propagating into that. From a big data perspective, if you log into a web browser in Google, there are ads that are popping up on the right-hand side. Why? Because it's mining data within those emails to create a data analytics behind it. And then the final thing that goes on and that we're all very familiar with is social. I have 3 daughters, and I have to be almost on every social media platform to keep up with them. So I'm not the expert, I never claimed to be, but I have to be knowledgeable to get into it. That is impacting the way that we're moving forward. The way to quantify that is if you think of, from a VMware survey, took a look at in the Asia-Pacific marketplace, 60% of the youth population in the world resides in Asia today. They're going to drive our agenda in IT in the future. They will tell us how they want to consume technology. They believe that they're much more productive at home. In APJ, they believe that 86% of the employees in that population believe that they are more productive at home than they are in the workplace. So we're being driven for a very, very, very different agenda. But that's also impacting businesses. So software-defined enterprises are popping up. You see some logos on the slide over here. There's a car, Tesla, slowly moving through APJ, in Japan, in Hong Kong, in China. But it's a software-defined enterprise. When they started Tesla, it was based around software. Built apps for mobile phones to turn the car on and off, to turn the air conditioner on, hopefully never the heater in this part of the world, to adjust the car in terms of the ride. Instead of buying a new vehicle as you would in a traditional sense, you can adjust that vehicle versus software. Nest is a thermostat. It's propagating around the world, started in the US, now in Europe. It's an intelligent device that helps understand your patterns as a person and what temperatures you like at certain times of the day. Uber, which you're very familiar with because they are operating in the Philippines market today, is a $17 billion valued company that's based around software. They don't own cars. They don't own any physical assets, but they've built a mobile app that allows you to get a town car or a black car, or in our part of the world also taxis, to come to your door to pick you up on a schedule. The way we consume media has changed a lot. Netflix is the example up here. Isn't a relevant example in the Philippines, but at my house, my wife was born in Beijing, and I'm a PPTV, Li TV user. My kids consume all of their videos through YouTube. So our content today and the way we want to consume content, the times that we want to time shift that, has radically changed today. That's creating huge opportunities. In other industries, even in apparel, IT technology is radically changing what's going on. At the US Open this year, Ralph Lauren put compression clothing on all the ball boys so that they can monitor their heart rate, the temperature of their body, etc., to do analytics behind it. Sportswear providers like Nike, Under Armour, Adidas are all looking at using threads of sensors to monetize and monitor, the performance of athletes, to understand what's going on. So even in industries like apparel, technology is taking over. IDC estimates that by 2020, there will be 30 billion sensors around the world. When you compare that to today's state, there's 10 billion. And so software is being embedded in traditional industries, as well as defining new industries in the marketplace today that is going to impact the companies that you operate in. So never in the history of IT has IT become so important to the business agenda at the CEO level. The pendulum has shifted. As you can tell, I have gray hair. I graduated in 1985. I come out of college. I work in the auto industry in IT. At that point in time, I remember the quote of the CEO of the company that I worked in: IT, I can consolidate companies and reorganize, but it takes IT 5 years to follow. The dynamic ability that's going on right now and the shift in our industry around big data, around cloud, social and mobile, are enabling enterprises to do things they couldn't do before via information technology. So the demand in the marketplace today from businesses is to be able to react much faster, to be more dynamic in what that business is. But at the same time, of course, we all know there are cost pressures that are going on. I'm just an informal poll. How many in the audience are going to be in companies that are getting more money to spend in 2015 for IT? Can't see a hand, any hands. That's the traditional, right? Flat budgets or declining budgets are what are going on in the industry. And so what happens is in an IT organization, we're forced to try and balance both of those needs, IT growth with the cost reduction that goes on. And it's a huge challenge for us. So business and IT have never become more interlocked than they have been today. IT is more valued than it's ever become because of the ability to create software-defined enterprises and software-defined offerings around it. Excuse me. So it's therefore radically shifting the way we have to think about how we provide services from an IT perspective in an organization. Now, going back to the mobile example, we talk about a lot of examples in mobile today, but all of them are more in the consumer space. If you think of your application portfolio, the shift that's going on is that your organization is going to be, from an enterprise perspective, is you're going to start developing applications that are native to a mobile device. So in the traditional world, in the old world, it was around a desktop device, a laptop device, and then you would maybe, in some of the enterprises today that we talk with, you've ported that application over. So good examples of that are SAP, traditional Oracle, et cetera, traditional systems. What's going on is a shift in the marketplace where you're building natively built applications for mobile devices. So you start developing that application first for mobile, and you may or may not move it back to more of a traditional environment of a desktop. You also see the shift going on where IT used to sit under the CFO, and it was a cost reduction automation play, whether it was it's usually an efficiency play in a business function. So, the targeted first applications when IT industry started was really in the financial industry, automating ledgers, accounts payable, accounts receivable. What shifted today are the examples that I used around the software-defined enterprise, or in a very traditional industries like clothing, where, CEOs or CXO levels are looking to go use IT to enable an offering and differentiate an offering. So the example of compression clothing and the sensor threads running through that clothing is a value add to the apparel that the sports industry is looking at, not just for performance athletes, but even for average individuals like myself. And I'm pretty average. Also what's going on is a shift from collecting data in very traditional ways and analyzing it from a historical viewpoint. So it's quarter end close for EMC. I was joking with Ryan, it's a bad day for us to have this event because we're looking backwards now. Today, I'm spending all the time if you see me on mobile device, looking backwards to see what we've done instead of projecting the future, which is what IT and big data are going to allow us to go do, to become predictive enterprises, to forward forecast. There are pontiffs that believe that the largest IT budget will be in the chief marketing officer's organization in the future. And the reason for that is they will be doing data analytics around not historical data, but future projection of data from social media, from industry trends, et cetera, to determine what a company should go do. So the shift then of how we're consuming and using data, not only from a mobile perspective, but from a predictive analytics perspective, is an extremely large shift going on in the marketplace. An example I would use in Asia Pacific and Japan is a customer of ours who's an auto manufacturer. And what they're doing is they are mining, we help them create a tool to mine social media data around the launch of a new vehicle, to engineer into those new vehicles features and functions that they would like to have in the next release of that car, and then through the engineering organization and the marketing organization, try and forward project the impact in terms of sales around it. So the ability then to take data sources that are out there and create large amounts of it and analyze it are a trend for IT. Finally, another trend that's going on is silos, and that the enabler behind that is cloud. So in a traditional sense, you would buy an application, say SAP, or you would build an application. You would build an architecture behind that that was siloed and unleveraged. As we're shifting to a cloud-based world, you now have the ability to create utilities behind it, IT as a service, to host that same environment. So as EMC as an example, we are the largest virtualized customer of SAP in the world. And we opted to go do that because we wanted to shift. So Tarun's going to come up and talk later on today about how we inside EMC have taken all the philosophies that we're talking about this morning and we're propagating it through as a case study example of ourselves. One of the final big shifts that's going on is in the security space. If you think of security in the past, it was a walled perimeter. It was about preventing people from getting in. But as you all probably know, the biggest risk are individuals like you bringing in a USB drive into the environment or intentionally going and doing things malicious inside it. So the way that security has changed is it assumes today that there will be an intrusion, that somehow, some way, someone will get into your environment, and it's around isolating that, segmenting it off, and quarantining it so that you can go and address it. So the philosophical change that's going on inside an IT organization is driving a new agenda for the CIO and for the IT organization. One is clearly and squarely in the mobile devices category. So using the example that 60% of the world population of the young people are in Asia today, we're all familiar with mobile devices in this part of the world. Asia Pacific is considered one of the leaders in terms of adopting it. Started with Docomo in Japan and it's propagated through. So we have helped drive that significantly, but we're not doing it and applying it quite as much inside the enterprise space. Agile development. So those mobile devices have required a different development cycle. You know, the average app that's on a mobile device is less than a year. So if you think of how often you add and delete applications to your mobile device, that's the world that's going to be driven into an enterprise space. So that rapid application development, the need to redevelop those single-use applications is going to be much higher. In an enterprise world, people estimate that it'll probably be in a shorter lifespan than a one-year lifespan. Data lakes are going to become huge in terms of a need in the organization. If you think of your data repositories today, you may have a data warehouse. The value of data comes from aggregating it all in together and creating a data lake. The enabler behind that then becomes the software-defined data center. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on, as well as the adaptive security around it. So the example I use in adaptive security is myself. I travel with 2 iPhones, 2 iPads, and a MacBook Air. The reason why I have 2 and 2 is one's work and one's personal. But I get my work email on all 4 of those mobile devices as well as my MacBook Air. I'm a security risk to EMC. Now, good news is I'm not perfect, but I'm a better than average user. But think of within your user base in your organization, somebody like me who's doing that, they probably aren't as sensitive. The example I always like to pick on is my wife and my kids. I'm the highest paid desktop support person in the world, as I joke. And it's inevitable when I travel, I get a phone call, whether it's my oldest daughter saying that her computer is infected or my wife telling me the internet is out. That's probably your user base in your environment. I think they're fairly representative. And my kids are digital natives, right? Since a very small age, they've had in their hands a computer and a device. But they still make mistakes themselves. So as EMC squared, as I like to put it, we've created what we call a unique federation of companies. So what most people know us as is the EMC Information Infrastructure, EMCI component, which is our typical infrastructure as well as the converged infrastructure component. So as David Goulden talked about in that opening video, more and more we're getting requests from our customers to have converged infrastructure. From the middle portion of it, it's VMware, which is around the software-defined data center and the mobility portion of the EMC Federation of offerings. And then finally, Pivotal, which is addressing the new application development world, all intertwined with security from RSA. A very important component of our strategy is also around the service provider community, because we don't believe that everything will stay on-prem or off-prem. You saw the statistics of the belief there are about 30% of you that have hybrid clouds today. That's in the range that we believe as well. So our federation of companies first is founded on the concept of having a software-defined data center that's largely led by VMware inside EMC squared. It's to create that core infrastructure in place to go do that, and then the components of the EMCI portfolio, storage and Viper, the virtualization of storage, software-defined storage strategy is EMC. That allows a platform in place to take care of traditional systems like SAP, like I referenced ourselves as an example, as well as the new applications development that needs to go on in new technologies like Rails, Spring, et cetera, to provide to our customers a platform as a service. And this platform as a service may reside on-premise, or it could be off-premise in our strategy. Then around that, we believe that we need to address the mobile space, largely through VMware's portfolio in the virtual workspace area, and then have on top of it, writing on top of it as well, to be able to access all of that are data lakes, large repositories of data that are both internal and external to an environment, and be able to secure those through security analytics. The number one application we see today in IT around data lakes is in security space, and trying to isolate and contain that within it. Excuse me. So the increased complexity in our organizations requires applications then and an infrastructure in place that can accommodate the big trends. So the software-defined data center gives you the underlying infrastructure around it, and you build the components on top of it. So what that does is it allows, from an EMC strategy standpoint, the ability to take care of the applications portfolio on the right, which is the traditional applications blended with the new applications that you're going to need to develop in your enterprise. And the reason for that is because there isn't a one-size-fits-all. So what this graphic represents is the fact that you have different requirements and different needs. So as an example, I'll go on the left bottom corner of it. You know, you need to be able to provide in your IT organizations a storage as a strategy service. And that's not going to be a high performance type of environment, but it's going to be a high capacity type of environment where you store it. On the upper right hand side of the chart, you can see transaction processing. So we offer products in our portfolio that accommodate all of these versus a one-size-fits-all strategy that many of our competitors have. So your challenge then as an IT organization is, how do I support all of these? And we believe that the first step to go do that is the deployment of a hybrid cloud. So we believe that there will be a natural blending of on-premise versus off-premise workloads for the right needs in the terms of that profile. So workloads will migrate to the cloud. There is no doubt. The question becomes, what workloads and how much? So Gartner believes that it'll be basically a 75-25 split, which was very similar to the data that came from the survey of the attendees here. We believe that 75% of the workloads will remain on-premise and 25 will go off-premise. One of the drivers of that will be cost. Today, the public cloud world, there's a belief that it is the cheapest, but it's actually not. And the reason why is just fairly basic and simple. Service providers build into their model the fact that they will have excess capacity sitting there. If you can predict what your workloads will be in certain applications, you will want them on-premise because you can run that workload cheaper. As well, there are metrics around statutory laws based on the industry you're in. So financial services has a different profile than, let's say, manufacturing versus travel transportation. But there are use cases that make a lot of sense for a public cloud world. And you'll shift those workloads based upon the application and the profile around it. And we have a methodology as EMC to help customers take a look at that and profile. So what you see then is what we've built is a stack of technology on the slide in front of you called the EMC Hybrid Cloud for VMware. So what we've done is we've taken all the components of a software-defined data center, put them together using VMware's visualization software to help automate that process of creating an infrastructure stack that allows you to be very dynamic. And as you can see on the left-hand side of the slide, the strategy behind it also allows us to plug into the service provider community, whether it's VMware's offering of vCloud Air or service providers that we have relationships with in markets around the world. Part of the underpinning component of it is the infrastructure side of it from EMCII, and the software layer then comes from VMware. But when you put that in place, that's not what your user community wants. So we have a belief as EMC that you need to create, though, a well-run hybrid cloud. The 6 attributes in the middle that you can see on the slide are what we believe are the 6 key attributes. So I'll just pick on one of them so that you kind of understand the concept behind it. From a self-service portal perspective, the way that the stack that we have in place today for EHC is largely around the technology, provisioning VMs, provisioning compute, provisioning network through NSX. What we believe, though, is that your user community probably has a larger demand. So if you think within your own teams, you hire a new employee, what you want to do is follow that person through a business process. So self-serve portal that integrates both the business flow as well as the IT flow to provision everything that's needed, whether it's an account on Exchange, storage as a service, et cetera, whatever it happens to be. We believe a well-run hybrid cloud has all those attributes, just like it can be a broker of services. So not just the services that you provide, but those that you may want to procure from a third-party provider. So we believe that the world is moving to a hybrid cloud world, but also there are things and attributes that are needed to make it well-run. Here's a slide, an example, and unfortunately there are no logos from the Philippines, and I know that our VMware colleague and Ronnie are diligently working on trying to fill that out. But our strategy is to work with the service provider community to be successful in terms of rolling out a hybrid cloud strategy. And hopefully in the near future we can add a logo or 2 up here for the Philippines. So our strategy as EMCII, as I would put it, is to help enable choice. So you can see competitors of VMware up on the slide. We will work with Microsoft, we will work with OpenStack, Google, and Amazon. Vice versa, you all know that VMware works with other storage partners other than EMC. Our federation is built around the concept of choice. We know that there are customers that might want a vertical stack, and that's why we have a federation, but we also know that if you think of your own IT environment, you need a horizontal partner as well, and we're able to fulfill that through our federation. So EMC is well positioned then to help you bridge the chasm between your traditional environment today to the future environment. So in summary, we believe the world is moving to a software-defined world, not just even in IT, but also from an enterprise space. That we need to both provide horizontal architecture to help enable you in best-of-breed products, but also create a vertical architecture around solutions in your marketplace around the 5 key areas that we described, which is in the mobile space, data analytics, software-defined data center, and platform as a service. So with that as context to the day, have an outstanding day. We look forward to your feedback. And again, thank you so much for attending today and being part of the EMC Forum in Manila.